Now we're currently in a slightly depressing empty car park of a pub in the west of England, just outside Bristol. This is during the lockdown. We're filming this. There's no one here. The pub's shut. There's just nothing open. But the one bright point of this whole experience is this. This is the Vauxhall Corsa-e, and this is fully charged. I kind of like this car. It's so unremarkable. I think that's the really main thing about it, because the Corsa is incredibly common. They've been going for over 30 years, this brand. Vauxhall have been making them. There's millions of them. So all over Europe, because Vauxhall was part of General Motors in the past, and so there were the Opel as part of the same group, and so there were just Corsas everywhere, and they were always they were often a starter car. They're often what young people would buy. Their first car would be a Corsa. That was a very small, compact little hatchback. It has, as all cars have, expanded in those last few years. So this is now exactly the same as the combustion engine Corsa in so many aspects. It is fractionally wider. The wheels are slightly wider apart. That's like a few millimetres, but you know, for a car aficionado, that is vitally important data. The front is so similar, I couldn't tell. You know, if I walked past this car in a car park, I would not know this was an electric one. The only clue is at the back, where there's a very small and discreet E. So it's not shouting out, I'm an electric car, I'm virtue signalling, follow me. It's not doing that. I do like the wheels. I've only just really noticed the wheels. I think they look really good. So I've got the aesthetic sense of a slug. I don't know anything about aesthetics. The blue is quite blue. It's quite intense on this one, but you know, it's got the little E there that tells you it's an electric car. There's a few criticisms which I'll go into when I'm driving it, but generally I'm really impressed with it. And I think I really want them to do well with this car. It is the sister of the Peugeot E208, which I have to say, when the Peugeot E208 was unveiled at Fully Charged Live last year, 2019, the amount of interest in that car, the amount of passion and fascination with that car and the look of it got a lot of attention. And in a sense, this is the slightly dowdy cousin, because it's identical. Everything else is exactly the same. The running gear, the motor, the battery control system, the batteries, it is the same. This is basically a Peugeot E208 with a different body. It's compact because it's a compact car, but I mean, I've got that front seat. Oh, it's my feet, slightly big. Actually, no, it's fine. I've got plenty of room. It does. I mean, it's not supremely comfortable. It's not a luxury car. It's a normal standard car. But for kids in the back, it's perfectly adequate. I can fit in here without any trouble. Can I get out without banging my head? Yes, that's a plus. Boot space or trunk, 267 litres with the seats up. So actually quite spacious. I put a load of junk in here this morning. It has got a flap there and that's got the jack and the get you home pump rubber stuff into your tyre thing, which is going to have a really proper technical name. Thing that makes that noise. There's a charging cable there. It doesn't come with a 3-pin charging cable, which I think is interesting. Only a lot of cars do come with a 3-pin and a Type 2. This doesn't even. They don't even bother with 3-pin. They're not going to be using that. It's so slow. Obviously, the seats go forward. It would have a lot of space to put junk in the back. It's got 2 isofixes, and there's the little E. Interesting little note. This is a very small thing on the charger. Every single car I've ever driven has a cover over the Type 2 connector, this one here, and the CCS connector. They don't bother with it. It's a waterproof door. Look, it's got a rubber seal around it. It's not going to get wet. It's not going to get damaged. It's fine. But it does have that. You take that cap off to use a CCS. You know, it's a little thing, but I actually think that's a step in the right direction. Now, I could open the bonnet, and what you would see underneath is some boxes and some wires. And I think, to be honest, there's really no point. There's nothing that normal mortals like you and I can do under the bonnet. It's not like old-fashioned cars where you might be able to tinker with something. You need a degree in software engineering to even look at it. So I'm not even going to look at it. I'm going to go for a drive. This isn't the first time I've driven it, and so I've learnt one or two of its little idiosyncrasies. You know, a lot of electric cars that are made by big manufacturers now, you have to put your foot on the brake and press the button to start it. It's on now. Usually you just like touch the button. In the Corsa, you hold the button down for quite a long time, particularly if you want to turn it off. That's what I've learned. Now I'm just going to put it into gear. You have to press the button at the side, which is quite sensible. Take off the parking brake, and then you start moving. I mean, it's a really easy, it's an incredibly easy car to drive. So I'm going to do all my pluses. Going to start off with my pluses, and they're plentiful. The ride quality, top notch. The performance is very, very more than adequate. You know, it's a nippy car. It's incredibly easy to park it, to maneuver it. It's small. It's got a really good turning circle. Let's talk about range, because that is a mystery in this car. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know what the real range might be. Here's my experience so far. I plugged it in last night, filled it, just plugged it in, and I set the timer, and it worked really well. So the timer came on at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it charged the car from that point on. And it wouldn't have taken long, because it was about half full. So it was full this morning, and it said 111 miles. 111 miles full. That's what it told me. I then drove 65 miles, and it said 111 miles. What did you but during that drive, it went from 111 to 128, and it stayed at 128 for a long time, and then it gradually came back down. So that's confusing. But now, okay, so now I've rapid charged the car, and it was at, I don't know what it was, 60% or just up about 58% when I got here. It now says 149 miles. So I think this car has a realistic 150 mile range, because it's not full now, if you drove it carefully. So what that tells me is the person who delivered the car, who was a delightful man, or another journalist that has driven this car, has really thrashed it, and they've pushed the miles to the kilowatt hour right down. I was getting 4.2 miles to the kilowatt hour on the motorway coming down to Bristol. Now this is a quick post-test drive update. So I drove a total of 207 miles in the Vauxhall Corsa-e, and the range just kept getting longer and longer the more I drove it. So I charged it to 100% on the last night it was here, and the estimated range was 186 miles at 100%. So clearly, with a bit of care, you could get 200 miles from this car. It is a basic car. I've never driven a petrol or diesel Corsa. I have no experience of them at all. I've probably been given lifts in them and not even been aware of. The Vauxhall brand, very, very old brand. I mean, Vauxhall, you know, I don't know how old the company is, but it's very, very old. It's been sold numerous times. It was owned by General Motors one time. It's now owned by the PSA Group, which is Peugeot and Citroën, French companies. As a child, I grew up with Vauxhall cars. My father always had Vauxhalls, the Vauxhall Victor, you know, which we would have gone on family holidays in. We travelled all over the place. It seems to be fairly energy efficient. I'm doing 4 miles to the kilowatt hour at the moment, which is, you know, very decent. But you can get 4 miles to the kilowatt hour, for instance, in a Tesla Model 3, which is a much bigger car with all-wheel drive, a much bigger battery, a heavier car, but that will do. I've got over 4 miles to the kilowatt hour in a Tesla in this sort of temperature. You know, it's perfectly decent, but I would have hoped to get over 5. Now, I think if I drove this car for, you know, over a week, I probably would be hovering towards that. I think I can get it higher than I've got it today. These things, all those are pluses. So this is, without question, much better than the combustion version of the Corsa. There's absolutely no hesitation in saying that, and I've never driven the combustion version of the Corsa. I just know I'm right. So those are all the pluses. Now the minuses are, I think primarily at the moment, from this sort of first early experience of driving the car, the kind of human-machine interface, always a problem. Why does it have to be difficult? Why can't I find it in a really simple graphic way, which we have the technology now to do? I mean, I've moaned about this before, I'll moan about it again. I think it is important. Why can't I see how far I've driven? Can't find that. It's pretty simple. A trip meter. Cannot find it. Why can't I see how much energy I'm using? Found that. Took me a while, found it. If you're buying a car like this, you just want a car that you go around in. You're not going to be a car obsessive aficionado and buy a Corsa-e. That's not who this car is for. This car is for normal people, except, and this is the biggest criticism of all, why does this car, after the UK government grant, cost over £29,000? That is an expensive car. Oh, it's more expensive because of the batteries. Really? You're still using that excuse, if that is the excuse they're using. Why is this so much more expensive? Mechanically, it's much simpler. It's much more straightforward. It's a much easier car to build. There are less moving parts. There are less components. The batteries aren't so expensive anymore. 10 years ago, massively expensive. It's a brilliant car. I'm not dissing the car. Why is it so expensive? I don't accept that it has to be this expensive because of the batteries, and that will be the excuse they use. And if that is the case, they're buying really expensive batteries. Quick thing, I've repeated it before, but it's worth saying in case you've not seen fully charged before. 2010, a battery pack, it cost $1,500 American dollars to produce 1 kilowatt hour of battery storage for a car. Now it's about 140, some as low as $120 per kilowatt hour. That is a massive, colossal, mind-numbing reduction in cost. So this is a 50 kilowatt hour battery. Doesn't really make sense at the end of the day. If you do the math and you multiply $150, let's go a bit above the current price, and you multiply that by 50, you don't come to £20,000, which is sort of the implication. The car cost 9 grand to build and the battery cost 20 grand. No. This car could now, today, in 2020, cost less to buy than the combustion engined version of this car. But just think about it for a moment. Just think about economics of running a very big company like PSA. 99% of it is to make combustion cars. They haven't made a rubbish one, they made a good one. I'm not dissing that. The engineers that built this have done a really, really good job. The designers have done a really good job. The people who came up with the concept of this cabin and of the structure of the drivetrain, really faultless, really, really nice car underneath it all. But if you're going to sell this car, if you can manufacture this car and make a profit and sell it at the same cost as your petrol or diesel cars, who's going to buy the petrol or diesel cars of which you make hundreds of thousands a year? And that is the conspiracy theory. They're making this car more expensive than it needs to be to hold back sales. That is my supposition. I really, really want to be proven wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But all the evidence is mounting more and more that that is the case. Although I moaned about the price of this car, it does include the fitting, the supply and fitting of a wall box charger. They will fit. So if you buy a Vauxhall Corsa-e, you get a free wall box that you plug the car into. And that is, they make such a big difference. If you've got an electric car, you will want one of those chargers. So things like that is nice. So the turning circle on this car is really good. That is really nice. You can do it. That's like a little 3-point turn I just did then. We went down the wrong way, gone down a little narrow lane. But to turn it round there, it was so easy. Reversing camera, really clear, put it in reverse, that stuff. I've driven, how many miles have I driven now? 15 miles since I got in it, and it said 149 miles. Guess what? It's still 149 miles. Definitely has grown on me. The more I drive it, the more I enjoy this car. It is unremarkable, but it's kind of good. It's kind of chunky and solid. It just feels really competent. Really competent. It doesn't feel wibbly wobbly, and I think that's a big plus. That's really all I can say about the Vauxhall Corsa-e. I never thought when I started making fully charged that I would ever review a pure electric Vauxhall. Obviously there was the Vauxhall Ampera, which actually was a brilliant car. That was a plug-in hybrid. Really, really impressive machine that came out a long time ago, and since then Vauxhall really haven't done anything. But this is I think they just waited till they knew they could do it really well, and I think they have done it really well. And so it's really whether you prefer the look. I think that's how you make the choice. Do you prefer the look of the Peugeot E208 or the Vauxhall Corsa? Because essentially you're getting the same car. Anyway, that's all we've got time for. Please do subscribe to Fully Charged. That's the really critical thing. That really is amazing if you subscribe. It's so easy. You don't ever have to watch another episode. Just subscribe. But please do watch other episodes. There's some brilliant episodes coming. Please do have a look at the Patreon link, which is beneath this video. That's how we keep managing to survive through these difficult times. Massive thanks to all the people who do support us. It's absolutely extraordinary. Have a look at the YouTube membership. It's very easy, much easier if you're not keen on doing the Patreon thing. That's another way of supporting us. And that's all, really, as always. If you have been, thank you for watching.